Oh, there's Paul. Cool. So we do have one guest. That's Carmen, and she's actually the first one to go. She's got a community proposal. So, Carmen, do you want to briefly mention what that is? And also, before we begin, I assume everybody's got the agenda, so I'll paste it here in the chat as well. There's lots of links there, so please open it, and we're just going to follow it.
Sure. Recently, we have seen other proposals in the issue repo that want to basically move. The wiki is getting sprawl. We're now at 160 top-level topics, and it's hard to organize. And so there are some other proposals that are trying to move more mature content behind Garrett. Dan has put in a proposal. Jay has put in a proposal for modules. I know that Ian has moved some of the tooling stuff behind Flash-Doc. And so this is just another thing where we want to take some of the community-laden proposals and put them in a /community repo. And where I think I would like your feedback is that the original scope of this were to be for community and user groups, the Google Developer Network, which is a thing that we started earlier this year, Google Developer Experts, meetups, release parties. So there's just so many wiki articles that kind of have sprawled over the years, and we want to structure them. So in the proposal, I have a proposed working directory with sort of nested directories that we can organize by theme. And then below, there's kind of what I call a follow-up, and that would bleed into maybe contributor experience and having people who want to do that. And then, of course, the last one would be whether or not it would make sense for some of the minutes of the tools working group to go into this repository in some top-level folder. So the purpose being that I see the community repo as a way to be a central source of truth instead of the wiki to be able to put collaborative docs, weekly meeting minutes, things like that. Yes, Jay.
I think Daniel pointed out we should have an XDoc repo a while ago, and after speaking with Dimitri and Andy, the owners of X website, the feedback that I got is the documentation that's on the website should just go in X website. I wonder what you think about having like a community directory within X website for this rather than a separate repository.
Yeah, I would actually like that, because then there would be less drift and it's all a single source of truth. I have talked to others that have weighed in positives and negatives. The positive is that we typically, if we can keep a GitHub workflow instead of a Garrett workflow because we have the wrapper that uses PRs instead of CLs, that might be a benefit for some people who want to do things like just contribute meeting minutes and organizer workshops and things like that. So if X website can still do that, I'm all for it.
I think all of the X repositories have the bot that converts PRs to Garrett that syncs between those. Garrett is still the source of truth. I think you would probably need a separate repo if you only wanted to do PRs on GitHub without doing Garrett at all.
Right. So either way, I know that there's positives and negatives to having a community repo. This sort of seems to be the way that other large-scale open source projects that are hosted on GitHub, although we just mirror to GitHub, some have chosen to make GitHub hosted, and they sort of have they have a /community repo, and then there's just sprawl in there. But it seems to be the place people go to sort of put their stuff. So where X website, people sort of have I think internalized XDoc and X website as part of the official project versus process notes. And so I just want a space for /community to be, things that may not be part of the official binary distribution, but still part of the larger ecosystem that is, the meetups network and whatnot. I see Paul. Sure, Paul.
Just a quick question. Living on the X website sort of suggests that everything is website-y, which isn't necessarily the case. So if you take the meetup organizers material that we've suggested might go under this community repo as well, it doesn't all naturally sit under something that then gets either listed as a directory on a website. That's just sort of more a random bucket of stuff for meetup organizers. So if Andy and Dimitri want to weigh it, have you spoken to them at all? I wonder if there's a strong impetus for it to sit under X website, then maybe it's sort of, even though it's X website by name, it's everything by nature.
Yeah.
So that would be my only thought.
I actually wrote to them yesterday and showed them the link to the proposal and asked for their thoughts. They are busy doing some other things right now, and they will weigh in next, well, maybe at the end of the week, but they have responded and said that. And it actually was from a comment that I saw Jay post in the related issue about the discussion that he had with Dimitri and Andy and X website. So I have reached out to them as of yesterday, and I will follow up. I just want to maybe get some feedback for the possibility for inclusion of tooling working group meeting minutes or anything that you would consider to be process notes or anything like that. That would be good,
100%.
a good candidate for this.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't, not that I have the final say on it, but I see no problem with that. It's only lived in the wiki for now because it hasn't really had a better home. So, and the docs that represent the meeting notes and agendas, etc., they've just existed as Google Docs simply because that was the easiest way to get things off the ground. But so happy for that all to shift to a better home.
Before we move on to the next point, Carmen, do you need anything in particular from the rest of the people in this call? Reviews, maybe input on some specific topic?
Yeah, if you have feedback or thoughts, whether to do it or not, things like Jay said, please put it in that doc. I will wait until I hear from Andy and Dimitri, and then I can put it into the issue repository as the intention is to make this this is not something that was born from me, even though my name is at the top as an author. It's really feedback received again and again from people that are contributors around, including the tooling working group, our meetup organizer group, and whatnot. So I want to put it in next week into the GitHub issue thread. And then the official sort of process is it would go into an issue thread in short form. And then if it's approved, then I can share the draft in the /proposals repository. So yeah, the call to action is to go to that link, please give it a read. If you have thoughts, whether reservations, fors, pros, cons, or other things you want to put in there for the initial file structure that I proposed, please do. That's all.
Great, thanks. The next item is a pretty big one. It's basically Go Please, so I'll just let Rebecca take over.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was just gonna do some updates. I don't of what we're doing since the last call. So I just went through the commits of what we added since we last had a call, which I think most people would probably already be using because we did a release since then. Actually, a couple. So the things that have been added the past month are Susie in her last few days of her internship managed to put in folding ranges and prepare rename, which I don't know if anyone's using, but it's basically this feature that lets you say, can I even rename this variable before we go and try and rename it? So that's helpful. And yeah, folding ranges is just when you click and you hide an if statement or whatever. Then Michael added suggested fixes on by default. And I think our first suggested fix was just if you wrote x equals x, then it would delete that. So it's a small start, but it's pretty exciting because you can just accept it when it pops up. And then Ian just merged the change yesterday that adds static check, and that will come with suggested fixes, I think, as experimental at first, but then more coming in soon. So basically, static check is now in Go Please experimentally, so you have to turn it on. There's still a few things like duplicate analyses that I think Paul filed an issue for, but yeah, on the whole, I think it's pretty cool. We still have to figure something with the ranges too, because it was kind of highlighting entire packages basically. Muir recently added a fix for completion after defers and go statements. So that was a pain point for everyone, and now we're at least fixing the AST more correctly to handle that. So they're features that have been added since the past month. Yeah, we had a release of and then a couple bug fixing releases. So hopefully things should be getting slightly better. I've been mostly working on the caching stuff and trying to get it to actually like basically trying to eliminate all the various race conditions that we have and make it so that you don't get weird errors that don't make sense. I'm kind of like halfway there. I think you should still be seeing some errors that don't make sense, which isn't great. But if you see something like type X cannot be used as type X, that's me. I know about it, and it's kind of a consequence of the like new, like the kind of garbage collection strategy that we have for caching. But that is something that I'm working on fixing and like properly invalidating the cache basically. But yeah, so hopefully like after all of this stuff is done, it will be many fewer race conditions. Basically the goal is to eliminate as many mutexes as possible. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about anything specific to Go Please, like questions, comments.
We do have a few items in the list, such as update on recent work with VS Code. Do we have anybody from VS Code here?
I don't think it's anyone, but basically I've been chatting with Rami a lot and trying to basically. So the main things that I've been doing have just been like trying to kind of like improve the integration with VS Code and like see where we can fix things and kind of consolidate stuff. And the one thing that I added was for this most recent release of VS Code was just downloading modules at the latest version rather than at master. So I'm like crossing my fingers that like a lot of our bugs will go away because people will be actually using a stable version rather than just like whatever they happen to pick up at master. And then also I added a prompt that will basically basically ask the proxy or like ask your proxy. That's a fix I have to make. But basically ask the proxy what the latest version is of Go Please, and then check the one that you have on your computer and then update it. So those, I'm hoping, basically what I've been trying to do is reduce the amount of pain points that we have of like, please update your Go Please version and this is fixed or whatever. But yeah, I'm hoping to do a lot more work in the future of like making it easier to file issues and just kind of clean up the integration there. And also like basically allow us to eliminate all those settings that we ask people to set. Like you shouldn't have to set like use like this for formatting or whatever. Like so hopefully I'll be able to make it so you don't have to actually do that much configuration other than just turn on the language server. Okay.
Great. The next item is blockers for 1.0. If you open the link, you can see there's about 20 issues left. So what's the timeline and status on that?
Let me look at the milestones. So yeah, we have the milestone. Basically, all those blockers are kind of, at least from, sorry, let me find the milestone. The first thing that I'm doing is the caching stuff. So we're gonna try and get basically like so much of it is related to the caching, and so that's kind of just been the push. Other things like we're kind of working. Yeah, like changing washed files is kind of like halfway done or more. Maybe Mira will talk about that. But other things are like in progress. Maybe not all of them, but like things like the diffing stuff that is going to be fixed with. We're going to add. Ian has a pending CL to add this Go diff library that will actually do diffs better than the current approach. And so that is like we have to figure out. I think there's some issues with applying the edits, but. Like the VS Code integration, but so the diffing stuff will be fixed soon. The like auto completion of unimported packages and like the module local renaming is stuff that we like have plans to work on soon. But yeah, anything feature related is going to be like a backseat until we finish the caching stuff, and then basically once that's done, we can move forward more quickly.
So you would say by the end of the year, more or less, or?
Yeah, that's the point. The goal kind of before 1.14, I guess, is the new thing.
Yeah, put some context. So we don't think we can turn modules on by default until tools are good enough that everybody's happy. We think switching everyone to Go Please is the right answer for that. So that 1.0 milestone is basically the point at which we are happy enough to say that it should be the default used by all editors. So that should be like the guiding principle behind what goes into that milestone. And if it's going to be on in time, if we need it tested well enough that we're happy early enough that we can make the call on 1.14. So yeah, it can't go much beyond the end of this year before we're just getting too late.
Just a quick question on that. And presumably that means version 1.0 of each of the editor plugins.
Ideally, yes, but yes.
Because I mean, if it's just, if it's just VS Code, that's a percentage of people who aren't necessarily getting that same experience because their editor plugins aren't as good.
Yes.
Mhm.
But to some extent, the timeline on those is a bit later. So knowing that Go Please is good enough and its integration with VS Code is good enough is enough for us to make a call on whether 1.14 should probably have modules on, because that still leaves a few months for the editors to finish switching.
So the next item in this agenda, at least, is the documentation update. I think that was you, Ian, right?
Yeah, and this is so it's related to what Carmen was talking about before. I did all of that work to move the documentation, hopefully improve it a lot. I want to know if that experiment is a success to inform the later decisions. So I was just wondering if anybody has any input on what they've seen and whether they like the new structure. And
Where is that documentation so that everybody can be on the same page?
it's in xtools go please doc.
Can you just delete is it worth just deleting the wiki now?
That was one of the questions I had right now. Is if everybody's
I mean,
happy enough with the new stuff, then I will delete the old stuff and just leave the redirectors in after this meeting.
Because my only thought was the people on this call are likely sufficiently familiar with everything to maybe not even have read the new documentation. It's more if you're not getting any noise from people who are new to it, then that's probably a good sign.
But one of the things that I want to find out from the people in this meeting is they're the people more likely to edit that documentation. So one of the questions I have is everybody happy with doing actual Gerrit pull requests to edit documentation instead of just editing a wiki? Nobody says no, so that's good. Okay then.
The next item is what frequency should we be aiming for the new Go Please releases?
So I've been thinking about this a little bit, the releases, and I was thinking, because I've made the change to basically automatically update Go Please and it's kind of like a prompting thing in VS Code, I was thinking that we can't really do anything more frequently than like a month because it will annoy people if they have to be constantly being asked to update. Like if at some point we can get to a place in VS Code where it'll just automatically do it for you, that would be awesome, and then we can just do it however frequently we want. But until we get to the point in VS Code where they're willing to let us just update stuff without asking people, I think we have to like be a little bit more slow about it. But like, yeah, so I think I'm trying to kind of think of like a process that we can follow that'd be more standardized than just me like randomly deciding. But yeah, I think our hope is to have some sort of like automation for constantly like updating the go.mod file in like in the Go Please directory, so that it will like you can always just go get a master without having to like manually like cd into the directory or whatever. And then so yeah, we should be able to like. So my plan for the release process would be something like we update the file at master just like on some certain day each month. To a point where we're gonna like that's the cutoff point. Then we have our release branch. People test that master for like a week or 2 weeks or however long we think is appropriate until we fix all the bugs at that point, and then we merge with only the bug fixes, and then we make the release there. So I'm thinking of kind of like starting to sort of enforce that process a little bit better. But yeah, so I'm thinking that, are people cool with the idea? Like, I think people have mentioned this in the past where they were like, can we have a version that we can actually, like a stable version to test at for the time leading up to the release. So I think that will probably be the approach.
There's absolute silence, so I think that's agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So just from a GoVim perspective, I know Billy's on as well, but having someone, having a version of go please, which then determines the version of X tools that will be used, as effectively okay, let's just test this out and shake out any bugs, etc. That feels like definitely the right thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. Like, that's fine by me. And Vimgo already uses latest, so anytime you do update binaries, that just works.
There's only one item left under Go Please, which is multiple concurrent Go Please clients. Does anybody want to briefly mention that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Rebecca, go for it. Yeah, otherwise I can do because that's really sort of more a Vim Emacs type request, I guess. Is that the caching changes that went in for the import resolution were absolutely fantastic. But for Vim users, and I guess Emacs users as well, who open and close editors and therefore start and stop Go Please instances regularly throughout the day, and maybe have 6 or 7 different instances running at any one time because they've got 6 or 7 different editor instances open. Having a single instance of Go Please would obviously be a massive benefit, not least because then any cache warming of the imports resolution would be usable by each of those editors and not lost by stopping and starting the editor again. So that was really just a plea that we try and work that in for V1 of Go Please, so that then other editors can effectively benefit from what VS Code sort of by default benefits from, because you generally don't stop VS Code throughout the day, hence you don't lose that cache. So yeah, that's really the context, and just a not so much a cry for help or a plea, that actually we consider that for V1.
So I'd like to add on to that too, if I can. I personally don't worry too much about people starting and stopping Vim and having to reinitialize Go Please and warm the cache again over time. I personally don't see that as being a big user experience problem, but I do think that I get lots of questions on Vimgo about people wanting to know like how to disable Go Please. I'm like, oh, you can't really disable it now because so much of Vimgo depends on it, and people they think, oh, I just want to use code completion using AL, right? So they want to use a different plugin that also uses Go Please. And so we get all these questions like, oh, well, performance, it's using up all this memory. It's almost usually not a problem, but it'd be really nice to be able to say, yeah, the Go Please instance can be shared between different plugins in Vim as well. That way, I know that we have the serve command that we're not really ready to make use of yet, but that would solve a lot of these kinds of concerns of people and a lot of kind of support requests that we end up getting in Vimgo.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the feature isn't that hard to implement. What is hard is designing how certain facets of it should work. Specifically, how do you discover the one true Go Please to talk to? What manages its lifetime? Does it ever shut down? What starts it again if it does? Those kinds of things. I need a bulletproof design that works across all operating systems for that side of things.
Well, and it seems like you'd also need to think about workspaces. Like you almost want each client to have their own kind of set of views for the workspaces, right?
That will work. The Go Please is designed to manage that internally correctly. So it has this multi-layered system where it will share what it can between them, but it will also isolate where it has to. So I don't think that side of it is a problem. Like we've done all of the really hard work to make the system as a whole work. The bit that's missing is just starting a server and finding a server and stopping a server. There's really interesting cases around some of the shutdown requests that need fixing too, but that's just a small amount of work.
We're doing something similar to what Go Code used to do, be a starting point. I mean, that's likely to be cross-platform on the basis that Go Code was used through Vimgo and other editor plugins for a number of years. Just a thought.
I didn't want to interrupt, but we only have half an hour left, and there's a lot of CMD Go stuff to cover, and I'm sure Brian is waiting patiently to cover all that. So,
can we just say one big thank you to Rebecca, Ian, and Mia for all the effort that's gone into the Go Please stuff over the last month and a bit. There's a huge amount of changes gone in, so it's definitely worth saying thank you and recognizing that.
I didn't know what to hold up, so the gopher will do. So the next big topic is CMD Go. Brian, do you want to give a quick overview of the release status and what you've been doing?
So most of what I've been doing this week is cleaning up regressions from 113. There were a few issues that were not caught adequately during testing that needing to clean up. Some Git quirks to work around, as always. A couple of bugs that I introduced in the version validation changes. Nothing super terrible, but lots of stuff that's consuming small amounts of time here and there. Let's see. Somebody asked in the notes, 1.14, will modules be on default? Or are we ready? That is, I think, an uncertain question at the moment. So we have 3 major blockers that we really need to take care of very soon. Those 3 are behavior outside of a module. So right now, if you're outside of a module, it's easy to fall into this state where you're re-resolving dependencies over and over again. And sort of the go command resolves, you do go run some source file, and the go command resolves all of its dependencies and figures out a module graph and downloads modules and whatnot. And then it throws that information away. And then the next time you run go run foo.go, it does all that over again. And it's a little bit faster because it's all in your local cache, but it's not a good user experience. So the main fix for that, I think, is probably just going to be having the go command refuse to run things that have dependencies outside of the standard library if those dependencies are not enumerated in an explicit go.mod file. Shouldn't be a huge effort, but it's going to take some testing, some plumbing. We still haven't implemented subversion support. We need to do that before we swap it over to the default. And then we have the big vendor proposal. Seems to be well received. It's going to have a little bit of work to do. We want to get that on before we activate modules by default everywhere. The 1.14 cycle is really short because we were so late getting 113 out. And then we've been cleaning up 113 stuff, so it's even shorter. So we have essentially 5 weeks to do everything that we need to do for 114 in terms of changes that need to happen before the freeze. We're still trying to figure out whether that's realistically going to happen in 114 or whether 114 is going to be kind of a quiet release and an opportunity to plan for bigger things in 115. So I'm planning to talk to Jay and Ian and Russ. And we'll figure something out. I'm not going to promise anything in any particular direction. Let's see. Next thing on the list. So next on the agenda, somebody had listed the plus incompatible proposal, but I'm going to skip that and come back to it. I want to talk about the vendor proposal for using vendor directories by default. It seems to be very well received. There's one minor question that's still open right now, which is exactly when we should trigger using the go.mod or using the vendor directory by default. Right now, we're leaning toward the PUD's suggestion of go 1.14 in the go.mod file plus the presence of a vendor directory. We'll try out an implementation. We'll see what people think in practice, I think. The proposal is not officially approved at this point, but there's been literally almost no objection on the thread. So I'm planning to go ahead and start prototyping it, and that way it'll be ready to go as soon as it's approved. And we can start getting some experience before the cycle closes. We don't really want to, land it right before the freeze and have things not work and not have any time to rework it. So I'm going to be working on that basically as soon as I can. All right. Also on the agenda, so I filed a proposal to maybe ignore plus incompatible versions. They're a continual thorn in the side of almost everyone, as far as I can tell. They're not good for module maintainers because they make it so that if you accidentally tag an old commit with a big major version, then suddenly all your users are stuck on that big major version until the end of time, and you can't release something after that because it's semantically sorts higher than all of the things that you can continue to tag that have a go.mod file. The proposal that I posted, based on feedback from the people who have added comments on it, is probably significantly too aggressive for 1.14. So there were a few other suggestions on the thread, and Jay had a few other suggestions too. So I'm going to look at things that we can do that might improve the situation that would be less aggressive than what's posted there. So just to set expectations, that proposal will probably not be accepted, and we'll probably take that feedback and I'll file some other proposal. Yeah.
Before we move on to another point, could I suggest that you make a summary of all the discussion that's happened in the past week or so? Because the thread is quite long already, so I don't think people are going to read all that, at least if they want to catch up.
Honestly, I don't think it's important that people read all of that, given that the proposal is not likely to happen the way that it is. I'll summarize in the next proposal the highlights from this one. Let's see. All right, other things in the notes. We had a request for clarification on when modules remain in the module mirror. I think I'm probably not the right person to talk about that.
So actually, yeah, this is related to the module mirror we are maintaining, and the question is on my tweet I said if the module doesn't have the suitable license, then there is a chance that the module will disappear from the module mirror. That is because it's a module mirror is operated by Google, and we have to adhere some law. And if the module doesn't have a license or recognize the license, then if the origin disappear, then we cannot actually serve this module content to anymore. We are not protected by the law. So in that case, we cannot serve anymore. And what is the suitable license? I wish I could answer, but so that we are still discussing with the lawyer. And our hope is that our discovery site, Julie and Rob are working on. Yeah, they actually are restricted by the similar law, right? They have a similar constraint, and they cannot actually show the content of the document content if the original module doesn't have the suitable license. So it can be a kind of a canary, or it can be a place people can see if this module has the suitable or recognized license.
Yeah, and people can. I'm not sure how this will be handled, but people can always file bugs through the site too.
Yeah, so there will be a feedback so that we can manually inspect. But most of them are automatically detected using software. So we observe that software. So
I'm not sure if those scare quotes.
software, yeah. So magical software, part of it is open source. But anyway, so we observe that many modules that module mirror currently serve don't have a valid license file, or some strange or non-standard license files. Then in that case, we cannot detect the license using the software, and they are classified as non-distributable module. So always we should be careful about when we use or we import some module or packages, always check the license. And I hope that at some point we can publish the best practice for the module publisher. What is the recognized license form? something like that.
So until that best practice and check is in place, I assume that any module could theoretically disappear from the module proxy. And is there a way to not prevent that, but to shield yourself from that?
Vendor. So it's a hard to if you find so the funny thing and so the actually the because we are also maintaining the sum DB. Actually, in practice, we keep the content probably somewhere. So we cannot serve. So if you cannot get this module from module mirror anymore, then you can file an issue, and then we can inspect. But most of the modules with like a MIT license or OpenBSD or the recognized open source licenses, they are served safely. And otherwise, vendor is the only solution that I can think of. Is there any other?
Yeah,
No.
or local proxy or something.
Local proxy, yeah.
Cool.
I assume
guess-
there are also a module could be taken down by a DMCA complaint or something
Yeah,
like that.
right.
Some other
Or
legal
copyright infringement. We don't have the a concrete plan for that, but there could be some other issues. So in order to completely protect yourself from this left pad problem, the only way is vendoring or a local proxy.
Okay, gotcha. I think we should be clear about that because lots of people assume that now that the proxy exists, the public one at least, they no longer need to vendor. So I think there's a bit of a confusion around that.
Yeah, we recognize it, and yeah, we want to improve our documentations.
And before we move on, is there an issue about this that people can follow to track progress?
I don't think there is the open issue, but yeah, we will keep track of it. And then, yeah, at some point we will open it in the issue tracker.
It's also worth noting that if the proxy can't serve it for legal reasons, you probably actually can't vendor or put it in a local proxy for the same reasons. So although you can still protect yourself, you are probably breaking the law if you do.
So in terms of documentation, this is also on the FAQ at proxy.golang.org.
Yeah, fair enough. So the next item on the agenda is, I believe this is Paul's Scopian-like proposal, or was it filed by somebody else?
Yeah, no, we can skip that if we're running out of time. It's just this can has been kicked down the road now for a number of months, and I think the agenda for this call is sort of testament to the amount of stuff that's going on. So it's not like people are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, not looking at it. So
yeah, just as a brief update, it's still on the radar. It is still unlikely to happen for 1.14. So I did talk to Russ a bit about it. I think people are still mulling things over. We're happy to see ongoing development in GoBin as an external tool.
That's fine. I mean, it's really just that I think there's so many different areas in which it comes up, and we think, oh, that would actually be a really useful case to have X, and it feels it's a good experiment, but it feels a bit brittle to be suggesting it to people. And it's even if it's the next step where to say, okay, let's try out an X tools, a total rewrite of it, because let's be honest, the code is very rough. That would sort of feel like at least a concrete next step, but I think it sort of needs to be led by either yourself, Brian, or Ian, on the basis that there's just quite a bit more lifting that's required. Which,
if you want it to be an X tools, you need to talk to Ian about that.
that was smooth, Ian.
If you want to put up some pull requests, I will probably review them.
Back at me.
This conversation feels very scripted.
The next item on the agenda is pretty much it's pretty related. It's the one about global installs, which also falls under GoBin. So I guess same result.
Yeah, I can talk about this one. So I've been thinking about this in the context of Go Please actually. Go Please, one of the things it does is it modifies go.mod a lot unexpectedly because it runs go list in the background. So I'm thinking about adding 2 flags to the go command, mod file and some file. That would let you specify alternate files for the go command to use. Perhaps copies of the originals moved to a temp directory. One of the things I was considering together with this is if you say like there's no go.mod file at all, it would operate in this this global mode as if you were outside of any module. And I think this is the mode we would want to be in for installing tools. I've made like a big list of all of the issues that are even tangentially related to this, and I think this collection of flags at least gets close to solving most of them. It seems like a useful primitive where people can figure out a usable solution with that. So I think with 30515, the global install issue, the way you would do this is like go get -mod file equals none. Another possibility here is that we would just have like a shorter flag that means the same thing, like a -g flag or something. And if you pass that to any command, it would be as if you're in this global mode. So part of all of this probably is we need to make the global mode a little bit more sane, but it would at least fix the tool installation issue. I wonder if people have thoughts about this. I haven't posted this as a new proposal yet, but it would be good to have some early feedback.
My only comment would be part of the global install proposal was also about applying replace directives, but then your flags would not touch that, I assume.
Yeah, I don't think that we can do replace and exclude directives in the go command. It just adds too much complexity. It means like most of the time, in order for this to work, we would have to check out a whole repository. And since our normal operation is through the proxy now, it just adds a lot of complication in corner cases. And I think it would be better for a standalone tool like GoBin to handle cases like that. In general, we would like to discourage people from using replace directives in production. I think it's fine to have them in development, but having like long-lived modules that rely on replace directives to work is not ideal.
Fair enough. I assume that if you do end up filing this as a proposal, you're going to link it from the other existing proposals. So we're going to see. Awesome.
Yeah, it may not be linked directly, but it'll mention the other issues. There will be a cross-reference.
Great. So I think that's the last CMD Go bit. Did we forget anything? Oh, Paul said I'd file something. You mean you would file an issue, Paul?
Yeah, I'd file. There's just we can talk about it here, but we'd be talking for hours because there's just I think so many bits and pieces and the overlap with GoBin, all of that is kind of relevant, right? So I think as much as anything, seeing what it would look like from the end user's perspective, because you've got to slightly bear in mind that if we're going to say, right, to the directions on somebody's website are to now say go get -g, for example, and then main package, we've got to be clear that that is a change we want to make before we tell people that that's actually how they're going to have to update their readmes for their various tools and things. So I think it's probably worth getting a proposal put up there, and we can use that as a straw man to see what it looks like. And you're right, there's plenty of overlap with GoBin, so working out where those lines get drawn or not.
Yeah, I'll definitely file an issue for that.
So the next item on the agenda is Go packages and Go analysis, but we don't have Michael, do we?
No.
So I guess that's up to Ian.
Yeah, the only big thing here is suggested fixes is ready for use and starting to be used. Dominic seems to be playing with it with great success. So hopefully we'll see a lot more action on that front.
It looks epic.
The next item, unless anybody else has anything to add, cool, is discovery site. So Julie, do you want to give a quick status update?
Yep. So we're still targeting to launch our beta before the end of the year. So since the last update, we've basically been doing a lot of reliability work to make sure that the site is running well when we launch. And I think the main feature that's new is the fact that we added directory module and package views. And so now you can actually like navigate between them using like a breadcrumb at the top, and in the packages page, you can also see like the subdirectories that are part of that package. And then we also fixed a bunch of edge cases with the standard library. So basically the remaining work we have before launch is there's some like internal launch paperwork left, which is always fun. We're finishing up some reliability work, so just putting together like monitoring and like some load tests. We want to move off of the current domain, which is godiscovery@appspot.com, and go to like a more permanent domain. So we're still debating the URL schemes for that. And then since we've been getting a lot more modules, we also are working to like improve the search speeds because we're seeing that that's getting slower as we get more data.
Just a quick thought. I don't think people from the outside are seeing these updates, so maybe you should be posting them somewhere so people can try the invites again and see how the site looks or how it compares to.
Do you mean post the trusted testers like invite link, or send email the current trusted testers?
The latter. Yeah, for those updates on the fact that you've got the module and directory views.
Yeah.
That would just be, I think that's kind of useful to people as and when it's released, right, to see it and try it out and give feedback. I may have missed an update, apologies, but otherwise just posting something to that pinned and locked issue is probably a good idea.
Okay, sounds good.
I promise not to unlock it again. The next, I added a small item here, which is I saw Dimitri posted a comment on another thread about Godoc getting module support. So I again got confused between Godoc, the command line tool, and godoc.org, the site.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently the command line tool is getting module support. So I just added an item here for. I was only slightly confused by which one is going to be ready first, Godoc the tool or the new Discovery site.
I think chances are the Discovery site, but the thing is that they're kind of separate projects in the sense that Dimitri has been working on documentation for the Discovery site, but that's more or less done. So I think he's just moved on to kind of working on Xtool stuff. But we're not adding module support to godoc.org, only the Go space or no space doc command line.
The only reason I brought that up is because it seems to me at least that godoc.org not having module support is a bit of a blocker for people adopting modules because you can't link to the documentation and so on.
Right.
So to me, if we were to enable module support by default, that's a requirement.
Yeah, I think that launching the Discovery site GA is something we want to do before Go on 14. But that's also why we're kind of focusing on getting the beta out right now too, because once that's out, at least like you will have documentation for anything with module support, and that's also why we want to work on making sure like the URL schemes are actually permanent. So if people do decide to start linking, it's not like when we go GA, all the URLs will suddenly change.
Yep, makes sense. Anything else on this front?
Mm-mm.
Cool. So there's only 2 items left, and we've got like 8 minutes left. So I think that's good timing after all. The first one is moving some of the wiki content behind Gerrit. This is a proposal I filed a couple of weeks ago. It seems to have gotten mostly positive feedback, but I'm not sure if it's likely to be accepted or not. Any feedback appreciated. I believe it's blocked by a proposal to refactor part of the website repo, but I'm not sure.
So I think a lot of the documentation we want to move into X website. At least Dimitri and Andy expressed a preference for them to be in that repository. At the moment, that repository has basically no content. It's just like templates and others like static images and such. All the content is served out of GoRoot. But I think we're going to be, like, I'm at least going to be moving more module stuff into there. And I could see a lot more of the documentation being moved there in addition. There's a lot of other stuff on the wiki though. So I'm not sure what to say about the rest of it.
I guess there's a huge overlap here with what Carmen was talking about earlier on, right? So is there someone, sorry to ask perhaps a stupid question, but is there someone who's sort of pulling together these various proposals and sort of working out what the right answer is, if that's not too blunt a question?
I don't know that there is. I think I feel like what we're missing right now is like kind of a map from the current wiki pages to like URLs on golang.org or within another repository if they're not going to be on the site. I haven't done that yet for documentation. I think Carmen's probably going to be working on that for community, but yeah, there's a lot more stuff on the wiki than I've ever looked at, so I don't have a great intuition for that yet.
We could bet on how many pages the wiki has, and I bet everybody would lose. So yeah, just as a quick update, I think the website should be figured out first, and then I think Carmen designed her proposal to sort of go after or alongside mine, so at least those two do kind of go hand in hand. And the last item on the agenda is Duco's proposal or draft. I don't know what to call it. Technical design document.
Yeah, okay. Well, whatever name pleases you. So thank you for anyone who read it. Brian, I know you left a few comments. I know it was also not very clear for a few of them. I've tried to add an example. A little bit of context. This design the document basically came up with design multiple target audiences, hence the actual content is a little bit like oriented towards various different people and different user groups. It's pretty big, so if you made it through it, congratulations. I'll try to trim it down or make it a little bit more easily digestible. The key idea is it deals with, not as exactly what Roger Pepe pointed out on the mailing list, not necessarily only migration, but also the maintenance of larger Go projects, which I actually shared a few examples like Prometheus, Kubernetes, or Kubernetes has a current solution, but a few other ones that have basically versioning issues when adopting Go modules due to the semantic version constraints and the fact that they have literally different API levels that are used by different user groups. This is indeed a big issue for them and a big question for them when adopting modules. So the idea is basically to automatically and based on configuration carve out sub-parts of the project and automatically mirror them in separate repositories, which would be independent Go modules. Basically that they can still kind of maintain and continue all contributions on the core project itself, while still basically allowing to all the internal APIs that are currently exporting, they basically would literally move them into an internal directory. I will not go much further into this. If you're interested in it, please do read and please do give feedback if you are able to do so. Just basically a ping for anyone to have a look at it if you are care a little bit about workflows, practical workflows for larger Go projects, and especially if we want to encourage people to adopt modules in a more serious way, because these bigger projects are big drivers behind a lot of the Go community, because people will interact with them at various points and for various reasons, basically. So if we can actually make something for their workflow work out nicely, because I've read a lot of complaints and a lot of malcontent, I'd say, with modules, or probably misunderstandings, but people don't really know how to phrase the different things. But yeah, so if we can actually provide a solution there, that I'm trying to do that. I'm oscillating between thinking it's an obvious and awful hack, or that it actually is a neat solution. But yeah, please let me know if you have anything.
The only thing I would say is, if this ends up being a proposal, you probably want to post it to the golang-tools mailing list again, just in case anybody wants to follow that.
So yeah, practically the next step, if I don't get much more feedback, I will start moving on towards a kind of proof of concept implementation with really bare bones, so that we can start working things out from there. But yeah, it's I will definitely, any progress like that, I will share it on the same thread I already started in that sense.
Awesome. So I think that's everything from the agenda. Have I missed any item, or is anything else left to do? No? Cool. So Paul already posted, I think he already proposed a date for the next call, so please reply in case that's a good or bad time for you. We will post the notes and video as always, and I think that's pretty much it for this month. Thanks, everybody.
Nice, thanks.
Thank you.
One thing I will add, I'm going to be in London next month and then in Florence. If anybody wants to grab me in person, that's why I'm there. Come talk to me.
That's October the 16th in London at the London Gophers meetup.
Yep.
We're going to have our
Maybe the way there, Paul, who the invite is.
I was gonna
invite
go to
is gonna-
Florence. Turn it off.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.